This guy was as cold and calculated as they come. Maybe we weren't going to get it solved.
It was like the epitome of innocence that had been preyed upon.
This is a case that has no evidence. We didn't have DNA. We didn't have fingerprints.
Step inside the court of law with the new true crime podcast, American Justice.
We realized we have 4 men who answered the same ad for a job on a farm.
My brother Ralph went to interview and he was never seen again.
A podcast that explores impactful crimes and reveals how our justice system works.
You have to consider that there are more possibilities than one.
And sometimes how it doesn't.
We have to find whoever this monster is.
Go in depth into chilling cases and their conclusions in this new true crime series.
You just have a pit in your stomach thinking, how many people are we going to find?
New episodes of American Justice are available every Wednesday, wherever you get your podcasts.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to episode 372 of the True Crime All the Time Unsolved podcast. I'm Mike Ferguson, and with me, as always, is my partner in true crime, Mike Gibson. Gibby, how are you?
Hey, I'm doing good. How about you?
I'm doing very well.
Yeah?
Are you doing an accent there?
I might have did a little bit of accent, you know.
A little,
how you doing?
A little something, something.
Yeah, you doing all right? You doing okay?
I'm doing all right.
All right.
Let's go ahead and give our Patreon shout-outs. We had Mike DeCaro.
Look, there's Big Mike.
Anna Swallow jumped out to her highest level.
Oh, Anna, you're awesome.
Stephanie.
What's up, Steph?
Bobby.
Oh, Bobby with an I.
Mike Conforto.
Oh, look, another Mike, man. That's a roll. That's a good thing.
Jack Sullivan.
What's going on, Jack?
Neil Laverty.
Hey, Laverty.
Sue and Neil Olson.
Look, Sue and Neil. You got a couple that listens to true crime together.
Stays together.
Yeah. Yeah.
Our good friend Katie O'Connor.
Thanks, Katie.
I think she just signed back up instead of trying to figure out how to replace her credit card number.
It's kind of an easier way to do it.
It is.
I like how she does it.
Yeah. Take the easier way. Jenny Hollihan jumped out to her highest level.
What's going on? 8675309.
And last but not least, Andrea Ware.
Hey, Andrea.
And then if we go back into the vault, this week we selected Mole Carquise.
Hey, thanks, Mole.
So we appreciate all the new support, the continued support. Gibbs, we have an episode out right now on True Crime All the Time where we're talking about Alex Rojas and the murder of 21-year-old Deaneth Lopez. Her body was found in Washington State on Valentine's Day in 2020.
Yeah.
And, this is a case that's kind of fascinating from the way that the detectives played Alex Rojas during the interrogation.
Very smart.
And, that was one of the fascinating parts of it for me. All right, buddy, are you ready to get into this episode of True Crime All the Time Unsolved?
I am.
We're talking about the Martin family disappearance. The Martin family left their Portland home on December 7th, 1958, to go out and search for Christmas greenery. So I took that to meant, maybe a tree, some garland. In the 50s, I think a lot of people, especially in the Northwest, I would think.
Yeah.
Went out to get their own stuff.
Kind of picturing like a Clark Griswold adventure, trying to bring the big tree back on top of your wagon.
The family truckster. Yeah.
Yeah, that's what I'm kind of picturing. How far have you went to get a real tree? Have you ever cut one down?
How far have I gone?
Like, how far have you went out into the woods? Did you
have I gone out into the woods?
Did you ever even leave your home?
No.
Did you just cut down your neighbor's pine tree?
Very rarely do we do real trees.
Yeah.
We've had a series of artificial trees that my wife really likes because they're full and they hold all the ornaments. Back in the day, we did get some live ones, but it was always like from a lot.
Okay.
I've never trekked out into the wilderness to cut down my own tree.
Oh.
And then try to figure out how to bring it home.
How to get it back.
And how to get it in the door.
You would be like Clark and cut one too big anyway.
Exactly. The Martin family never returned home and were missing for months. The following spring, the bodies of 2 Martin daughters were found in the Columbia River. The police came to believe the family died in a tragic accident after their car fell into the river. However, there is circumstantial evidence indicating there might have been foul play involved in their disappearance. One persistent detective considered the Martin's son a potential suspect. So we have a lot to unpack here. Kenneth Martin, who went by the name Ken, was born in 1904 in South Dakota. His wife, Barbara, was born in 1910 in Hillsboro, Oregon. Kenneth and Barbara Martin had 4 children. Their oldest child, Don, was born in 1930. Their daughter, Barbara, who went by the nickname Barbie, was born in 1942. Virginia Martin was born in 1946, and their youngest daughter, Susan, was born in 1948.
Well, it's a big gap from the firstborn to the secondborn.
And from the first to the last. That's 18 years. At the time of the family's disappearance, Barbara, Virginia, and Susan were just 14, 13, and 11, respectively. Don would have been about 28 years old by that point.
Yeah.
The family left their home in Portland on December 7th, 1958, to drive to the Columbia River Gorge to find greenery to decorate their home for Christmas. The skies were cloudy that day, but it wasn't supposed to rain. It was unseasonably warm with the temperature in the 50s.
That's a good day to do that.
I would think in Portland, first of all, if it doesn't rain, that's a good day. And to be in the 50s in December, that's got to be pretty nice.
I know we enjoy it here when it's in the 50s in December.
Yeah.
You're actually put your shorts on.
If I've ever taken them off.
Good point.
Around 10:30 a.m., Barbara's cousins stopped by the house with their children for a visit. They were on their way to a Sunday dinner and invited the Martins to join them, but they declined because of their planned outing. The family left around 1 p.m. Ken drove the family's 1954 cream and red 9-passenger Ford station wagon, license plate 1G7156.
Sounds like a beauty.
Well, it does sound something like a family truckster. 9-passenger.
Kind of reminds me of the one I kind of grew up in.
Well, you know, I feel like there for quite a long time, station wagons were pretty popular. For one thing, there was no minivans.
No.
Right? Minivan today is the station wagon of old.
Yeah. Or SUVs.
Or SUVs that hold, you know, X number of people because they got a third row seat. But before that, if you had a gaggle of kids, you needed a station wagon.
Hey, we had the station wagon. Mom and Dad threw all 3 of us in the very back. Not the back seat, but they sometimes just had us get back in the very back part. Huh? And we just sit back there and roll around, bang our heads off of the window, the different parts back there. They didn't care, you know. As
long as you weren't in their hair.
Exactly.
Right.
Yeah.
I was going to say, if you had a lot of kids or 3 husky boys,
well,
then you might need a station wagon as well.
They had some husky boys.
Greg Graven, the grandson of the lead detective in this case, told the outlet KOIN the time of day they chose to leave was not a common time. Kenneth didn't like to drive when it was dark out.
So I'm guessing because they left at 1 p.m., by the time they finished up looking for greenery and stuff and made their way back, that it was going to be dark out.
Well, it does seem to me, if you are a person that does not like to drive when it's dark out, you probably would have tried to, you know, leave a little earlier.
Get your day going?
Yeah, get your day going sooner, but maybe they couldn't do that. The family was reported missing on December 8th after Ken failed to show up to work. Ken Martin was described as cheerful and outgoing. He was a respected employee of a local appliance company and managed the repair department. His employer was worried when he didn't come to work and didn't call. And how many times have we heard that?
Well, we hear it a lot, but I really think back in the late 50s, it was probably a very unique thing for someone to miss work. Be a cause for concern.
You think more people miss work today than they did back then?
I do, and I think
the reasons for it are probably more varied and sometimes more made up.
And I think a lot of managers or employers just don't really care about chasing them down.
Yeah, you're probably right. But, you know, in a lot of scenarios, it is this kind of missing work that kicks off the worry. Because if you think about, you know, a lot of people being at home, well, nobody really knows if they're home or not. But people know whether or not you show up to work.
Sure.
So it's kind of like a defining event that kickstarts this concern. Well, he didn't show up. He didn't call. Something must be wrong.
Yeah, it's kind of like, you know, when I worked for you back in the day, if I missed work, you probably didn't really give it much concern. But if I missed coming here to record and missed my free meal, then you knew something had to be wrong.
Yeah, I would definitely know something was wrong. At work, we'd probably just actually get more done.
Nice.
The police were dispatched to the house and found nothing out of the ordinary. The house was as they left it. There were dishes in the drying rack, a load of laundry in the washing machine, and Kenneth's Santa suit was laid out. He wore it at a Christmas party he attended the night before. He dressed up as Santa every year for the neighborhood children. So, I mean, you think about this, police are going into a scene and they're not seeing anything. This is not looking like some kind of crime scene.
Yeah, they go in and it just looks like a normal family home. He had a Christmas Santa suit out and you would have your furry suit out.
Well, you know, if you don't find blood, you don't find signs of a robbery, you don't find the house in disarray, what are you thinking?
What are you left with, right?
Well, nothing happened here.
Yeah.
The police looked into the family's disappearance further and discovered that they had a substantial amount of money in their accounts. This was according to the Charlie Project. No checks were drawn on the family account after December 5th. They weren't having any financial troubles at the time, and Kenneth wasn't having any problems at work. So, I mean, this does not sound, I think, at least from the standpoint of the police, as though you got a lot to work with.
Yeah, I mean, from the surface, it looks like it's a perfect family.
Who's not involved in anything that would generate a lead. The condition of the house didn't provide you with anything. The family's disappearance was major news, locally and even out of state. The Multnomah County Sheriff's Office received hundreds of leads that they followed up on, but none of them panned out. Authorities also searched forests, rivers, lakes, trails, and mountains within a 50-mile radius of Portland.
Sounds like they're doing a pretty intense search.
A 50-mile radius is a lot of ground to cover. In 1958, we don't have drones or anything like that.
Right.
On December 9th, sheriff's deputies said their best lead at that point placed the family on Larch Mountain. At the west end of the Columbia River Gorge, a woman had seen a family matching the Martins' description on December 7th at a farm where several people were buying and cutting their own Christmas trees. She was purchasing her tree when a station wagon with a man, woman, and 3 girls came to the farm. She spoke to the family and remembered their last name was Martin. Okay, well, finally, that is somewhat of a lead.
And at this point, I think investigators would take anything they can get.
Oh, I believe they would too. It also shows you that they just didn't go out in the middle of nowhere and cut down a tree. They actually went to a place where you bought a tree to cut down. So not quite Griswold-like.
Yeah.
Which I think is pretty smart.
And probably how a lot of people do it.
The investigation shifted gears on December 23rd, 1958, when the police got their first solid lead. A gas bill from a service station in Cascade Locks was delivered to the home, placing the family 40 miles away from Portland. on the afternoon of December 7th. Ken purchased 5 gallons of gas and signed the receipt. His signature was verified by a handwriting expert.
Now, there's something that wouldn't happen today.
A gas bill from a gas station mailed to your home.
Yeah. Don't worry about it, sir. We'll just bill you at home. Pay us when you get the bill.
Well, I can tell you this. I've never heard of anything like that. It says he purchased 5 gallons of gas, but it also makes it sound like they billed him later. That would be unheard of today. You can't even buy gas and then walk in and pay for it. You either have to prepay or use a card.
That's true.
Because people are just going to take off if you allow it the other way. Station operator Dean Baxter told the police he remembered the family stopping at the gas station on December 7th. The police soon got another lead. A waitress in Hood River, 25 miles east of Cascade Locks, believed she saw the family eating at the cafe where she worked during the late afternoon of December 7th. She recalled that Ken had 2 cameras with him, and when the family left, they headed toward the Dalles, which is 90 miles east of Portland.
So this is great, right? You're finally getting some timeline to put together.
You are, but it is taking a lot of old-fashioned police work, right? Going and talking to people. There's no getting cell phone records to track where these people went.
No.
According to the 2019 book Echo of Distant Water, the cafe was more than an hour out of the way from what was believed to be their original destination on Larch Mountain in Multnomah County.
Maybe they heard that the food's really good there.
Maybe. After they left the restaurant, they didn't come home, and none of their family or friends heard from them again. So this is believed to be the last credible sighting of the family. Although there were many reported sightings, a salesman named John Esper came forward to report that he saw a car matching the description of the family station wagon traveling east near the Dalles on December 7th.
Which aligns with what the waitress at the restaurant said.
It does. My thought is there was also probably quite a bit of station wagons that looked similar.
Yeah, that's
back
true.
then out on the roads. There was also a report from an officer in Boise, Idaho, who saw a car matching the description on December 15th. He noticed 2 men sleeping in the car. He wrote down the license plate number, but lost the slip of paper. He felt positive it was an Oregon plate.
Unfortunate that he lost the slip, though.
Well, I think very unfortunate because it could have conclusively proven that this was the Martin family car. And then from there, you got to figure out why there's 2 guys sleeping in the car.
Yeah.
And your mind, I think, automatically would go to, well, these 2 men did something bad to the Martin family and took off in their car. But as it stands, we don't conclusively know that it was their car. Witnesses reported seeing an abandoned car parked along the highway near Cascade Locks. Since December 8th, this car was stolen from Venice, California. When the police rechecked the area, they found a single black glove on the shoulder of the road that relatives said might have belonged to Barbara, according to one relative. So, there are some really good leads. There are some circumstantial leads, I'll call them, that may or may not have involved the family.
I think it'd be tough to say that this black glove belonged to someone specific.
Well, let's face it, a lot of people wear black gloves.
Sure.
By the end of December, the authorities were out of solid leads in the family's disappearance. And there seems to come a point in most unsolved cases, right? You get a flurry of information normally in the beginning, right? There's so much media. There's hype around this disappearance. There's a lot of people coming forward, but eventually that all seems to dwindle. Whether that's because everybody who had information has already come forward, or it's because there are new cases that the media is reporting on, and this one is not getting as much coverage. Homes.com knows that when it comes to home shopping, it's never just about the house or condo. It's about the home. And what makes a home is more than just the house or property. It's the location and the neighborhood. If you have kids, it's also schools, nearby parks, and transportation options. That's why Homes.com goes above and beyond to bring home shoppers the in-depth information they need to find the right home. And when I say in-depth, I'm talking deep. Each listing features comprehensive information about the neighborhood, complete with a video guide. They also have details about local schools with test scores, state rankings, and student-to-teacher ratio. They even have an agent directory with the sales history of each agent. So when it comes to finding a home, not just a house, this is everything you need to know, all in one place. Homes.com. We've done your homework. True Crime All the Time Unsolved is brought to you by Progressive Insurance. Let's face it, sometimes multitasking can be overwhelming. Like when your favorite podcast is playing and the person next to you is talking and your car fan is blasting, all while you're trying to find the perfect parking spot. But then again, sometimes multitasking is easy, like quoting with Progressive Insurance. They do the hard work of comparing rates so you can find a great rate that works for you, even if it's not with them. Give their nifty comparison tool a try, and you might just find getting the rate and coverage you deserve is easy. All you need to do is visit Progressive's website to get a quote with all the coverages you want, like comprehensive and collision coverage or personal injury protection. Then you'll see Progressive's direct rate, and their tool will provide options from other companies all lined up and ready to compare, so it's simple to choose the rate and coverages you like. Press play on comparing auto rates, quote at Progressive.com to join the over 28 million drivers who trust Progressive. Progressive Casualty Insurance Company and Affiliates. Comparison rates not available in all states or situations. Prices vary based on how you buy. As reported by Columbia Gorge News, 5 departments across Portland and the Columbia Gorge searched for the family, but there was a lack of coordination between departments and no consistent leads. And, you have to talk about this lack of coordination. It comes up in many, many unsolved cases. The one that, I jump to immediately is the Zodiac.
Yeah, true.
Zodiac committed crimes in multiple jurisdictions. Some of them didn't know what was going on in other jurisdictions. They didn't know who was doing what. Some people thought that a certain jurisdiction was handling something when they weren't, so it never got done, or a lead never got checked up on.
Right? They didn't really talk to each other, or if they did, there was some type of competition.
Yeah, and I don't know if it's all that uncommon today. There's still some times where that rivalry or competition, if you want to call it, still exists.
You think if they just collaborate, it makes more sense.
Now, I'm sure it's better today. The case quickly went cold. The Hood River County Sheriff theorized that the family vehicle might have accidentally fallen into the Cascade Locks while backing up in the parking lot. The Cascade Locks were designed to control the rapids of the Columbia River. KOIN reported that back in 1958, the riverbank went right up to the edge of the locks. The Columbia River is no joke.
Well, it's a serious river.
I think a lot of people go whitewater rafting on the Columbia, don't they?
I believe so. I think, is that the one I kayaked?
Yeah, that's the one you set the record on.
Yeah.
In early 1959, the Army Corps of Engineers lowered the water level of the lake behind the Bonneville Dam in Cascade Lock. Portable sonar equipment was used during the search, but nothing of significance was found.
You imagine what that size of that sonar equipment was back then?
1959?
Yeah.
In February of that year, undisturbed tire tracks and paint chips that matched the color of the Martin's car were discovered on the bluff of a cliff overlooking the Columbia River in the Downs. It was Multnomah County Detective Walter Graven who discovered the tire impressions and paint chips, and what this did was it led to a new theory. Was it possible someone pushed the car off the bluff to destroy evidence?
It's a good theory, though. If they found paint chips that matched the car, and if they found tire tracks that match a similar vehicle as well, it's got to make you think.
Well, I think, you add to that Detective Graven didn't see any evidence of the car returning from the bluffs. So I think that helps strengthen the theory that it fell or was pushed off. The paint chips were sent to the FBI crime lab and were determined to be the same make, model, and paint as the family vehicle. There are multiple theories about what happened to the family. However, many members of law enforcement suspected Ken Martin accidentally drove the family station wagon into the locks after they stopped for gas in Cascade Lock. So that's one theory, right? Accident. He wasn't looking, wasn't paying attention, somehow drove the car over the cliff and everyone was killed. Another theory is that the family was hijacked and killed by 2 ex-convicts who were in the area on December 7th, 1958.
And then it kind of makes you go back to that, the sighting by the officer that remember seeing 2 guys sleeping in a car very similar, but he couldn't remember the license plate, but he was pretty sure it had Oregon plates on it.
So could those 2 guys have been, these ex-convicts? One of the convicts was Roy Light, who was known in the Dalles. According to KOIN, Roy Light was living near an aluminum plant close to the bluffs. The second convict was not identified in any of the sources we use for this episode because he may still be alive. Detective Walter Graven became a main proponent of the foul play theory. He finds these paint chips. He sees no tracks leading away from the bluffs. Now, to me, that kind of rules out the carjacking, maybe, and they took off with the car, because you're not seeing tire tracks going back the other way, but there could still be foul play and somebody could have pushed the car off of the cliff.
Yeah, or they could have hijacked it and then realized that maybe they needed to get rid of the car, and him living near this area where he worked at the aluminum plant said, you know what, I know where to get rid of this thing. We're going to drive it over there and push it off.
Detective Graven wrote in his personal case notes, Roy Light, and he had this other guy's name, but it was redacted, were together the evening the Martins disappeared. They disappeared from the Dalles shortly after this, whereabouts unknown. Additionally, both convicts were known by the owner of the Hood River Cafe, where the Martins were last seen. The owner saw the 2 men at the cafe. The same evening the Martins ate there, the owner told Detective Graven, Roy Light, and this other guy were at the cafe when the Martins were there. They left at approximately the same time.
So that's going to raise your suspicion.
Yeah, I mean, it's leading you into kind of a theory that these 2 men saw this family and made a decision, made a plan that they were going to follow them and do something to them.
Maybe they said, looks like an easy target to us.
Maybe they have money. The 2 men disappeared after December 7th, 1958, and were never interviewed. So, I mean, none of that means anything conclusively. But when you string all of that stuff together, it seems like a lot more than coincidence, right? They're eating at the same restaurant. They leave at approximately the same time. And then all of a sudden, after this family goes missing, these 2 guys are never heard from. They just kind of disappear.
Definitely adds to the mystery.
According to a December 31st, 1958 article from the Bend Bulletin, an abandoned vehicle was found near Cascade Locks, but law enforcement doubted if there was any connection to the Martin disappearance. The keys were still in the ignition and gas was in the tank, and the car was stolen by one of the men seen in the cafe, according to the book Echo of Distant Water.
So I kind of think maybe it did have something to do with it.
Yeah, I mean, to me, it seems strange that law enforcement would come out and say they doubted there was any connection, because modern researchers believe the abandoned vehicle supports the murder theory. And you can kind of see how it might. They drive a car out there, murder this family, possibly push the car off, and then abandon their stolen car, head off on foot, or maybe they did take the Martins' car and abandoned their stolen car.
I think you have to look at all those theories.
Yeah, I don't think we can rule anything out at this point. In January 1959, a resident of Odell, just west of Cascade Locks, found a gun underneath a rock not far from the abandoned stolen car. The handle of the gun was coated with dried blood, and there was an empty bullet casing in the chamber, which indicated it had been fired at least once. Bonnie Cox, the wife of the man who found the gun, told KOIN in 1986 it was completely coated with dried blood from whatever they had clubbed. They had clubbed something to death, apparently. The gun was turned over to local police, but it was never processed as evidence and was returned to the man who found it.
I mean, they're finding good evidence. They're finding good potential evidence. But for whatever reason, why aren't they keeping it? Why aren't they testing it? Why do they give it back?
Yeah, I don't know how much blood work they could do in 1959. Not sure what the results would have told them, but when you think about it, why would somebody hide a gun covered in blood under some rocks near this abandoned vehicle that was thought to have been stolen by these ex-convicts?
Very strange.
Yeah. Now you could say, well, why didn't they keep it, bag it? And you would like to have thought that they would have. But if they didn't think it had anything to do with their disappearance, okay, maybe that's one thing. They obviously couldn't have known what technology was going to emerge.
True.
Later on. Detective Graven traced the serial number to a department store called Meyer and Frank Company. Donald Martin, Ken and Barbara's oldest child, previously worked at Meyer and Frank. And we haven't talked about Don in a little while, right? We mentioned that, he was 28 years old when his family disappeared. He was enlisted in the Navy and was living in New York, but Detective Graven considered him a possible suspect. Donald did not return to Oregon to help with the search efforts, so the detective spoke to him over the phone. According to Graven's confidential report and case notes, Donald was fired from Meyer and Frank on September 7th, 1955. He was accused of and later admitted to stealing $2,000 worth of merchandise, which his father, Ken, paid for.
So his dad bailed him out, basically, right?
Yeah. And one of the pieces of merchandise that went missing while Donald worked at the department store was a .38 caliber revolver.
So then you have to think, was it this specific weapon?
Yeah, there's a tenuous connection there, possibly. But I want to go back to the fact that, this guy's whole family is missing and he doesn't return to Oregon to help with the search efforts.
Well, maybe he didn't have the money to fly from New York to Oregon or
Oregon.
Yeah. Or take that long trip. I mean, it would probably be 4 or 5 days drive.
Yeah, I get it. Maybe he couldn't get away from the Navy.
Maybe.
But I think most people listening would be of the mindset that if my family went missing, I'm getting there.
Yeah, I'm on my way.
Yeah, I don't care if I got to Forrest Gump it across the country. I'm going to make it there somehow because I want to find out what happened to my family.
Forrest Gump it. That's funny.
Grow a beard.
I just started running. Just running.
And I ran. When Donald was questioned further, he admitted he had a strained relationship with his parents. So you could see kind of why, I guess, this detective was at least looking at him. There were a couple of things that didn't look great here.
Well, we knew his parents had money. They saved up a lot of money, is how they made it sound like in the research. And obviously, Donald didn't because he was stealing from the place he worked at.
And I assume he would have known that they probably had money.
And maybe he asked for it and they said no, or maybe he thought, well, maybe I'll just take your money.
Well, my assumption is they probably would have said no because they already had to bail him out after this massive store theft. I mean, $2,000 in the 1950s is no small amount of money.
Yeah, it's substantial.
Progress came to a halt for the next few months. The most significant development in the case occurred in the late spring of 1959. On May 1st, 1959, a barge dropped anchor in the Dalles below the bluff where the tire tracks and paint chips were found. The anchor hooked a large object in the water, which the crew described as the size of a car. A deckhand reached down with a pole and hit metal, but the crew never actually saw the object. The crew got the anchor free, and an object that looked like a bundle of clothes floated to the surface and was carried downstream before they could get to it. 2 days later, on May 3rd, 1959, the body of Susan Martin was found in the Columbia River near Camas, Washington. The following day, the remains of Virginia Martin were found in the water near the Bonneville Dam and Cascade Lock. Both girls were identified by their clothing and dental records. The family dentist viewed both bodies and was confident in his identification. Family members identified the clothing as belonging to the girls. Officials said there was no evidence of foul play. The discovery of the bodies, though, seemed to support the theory that the family died when their car fell into the river.
I wonder when the barge messed around with the vehicle underneath the water that dislodged the two girls.
Yeah, I'm with you. I think it's a pretty good theory. You know, if they were in the car, could the jostling of the car made by this anchor have caused their bodies to become dislodged and, you know, maybe float out of a window? Or maybe the anchor hit a window, broke it free, and that's what caused it. I don't know. But it would be a strange coincidence, right? That this barge has this contact with what they believe to be a large metal object just below where the tire tracks and paint chips were found. And then just days later, you know, these two bodies are found.
And I know they said they didn't suspect foul play, but I don't know if you could really say that. Just because the girls' bodies didn't appear to look like foul play was involved, I don't know if you can really say that.
Well, I think you can say that.
Well, you can say it. I just don't know if I need to believe it.
Well, you don't have to believe it. You don't need to believe it.
Right.
I mean, you can say it because there's no evidence of foul play.
Right.
But, you know, this is something I've talked about before. Not seeing any evidence of foul play doesn't mean there wasn't foul play. The exact cause of death couldn't be determined, but the pathologist listed probable drowning in the report. So if you just go by that both of these girls drowned, I think you could look at it in both scenarios and say, well, it could have been an accident. They could have driven over by mistake. They plummeted into the water and the whole family drowned.
Right.
Or you could say they were forced into the car. Somebody pushed the car over. It plummeted into the water and they drowned.
Yeah.
Those would be two very different things, but would look, I think, to a pathologist very similarly.
And one is accidental.
And one is murder.
Yeah.
Multnomah County identity tech Russell Bissett took fingerprints and photographed Virginia's body. In his report, he wrote next to photo 6, showing head with hole in head. Unfortunately for modern investigators, there is only one poor quality photocopy in existence. The original autopsy photos are gone. The police have not said if they think this hole was created during an accident or was the result of an attack. But this is obviously something that you have to consider. Showing head with hole in head. Now, are there a number of different things that could cause a hole in somebody's skull?
Sure.
I mean, I think first and foremost, people think gunshot. That will do it.
Yeah.
But could it also be that, you know, this body was floating in the water, hit a rock, hit a really sharp rock? I don't know.
Could it also been that someone hit her in the head with the handle of the gun? Because that gun was supposedly caked with blood as if it was used on hitting somebody in the head.
Yeah. I mean, as we often are. right? We're left to speculate and to throw out different scenarios and things like that. The girl's funeral took place on May 23rd, 1959. Don Martin did not attend.
That's strange.
Well, I thought the first part was strange, right? You're not trying to get to Oregon to, look for your family, but now 2 of your sisters are found dead.
Yeah.
And you're not going to attend their funeral.
You're the person that represents the family at this point.
Because there's nobody else left.
Yeah.
He didn't arrive in Portland until June 2nd of that year. Don was reluctant to discuss his family with the media, but he explained that he missed the funeral because of a mix-up with the date. Now, I've mixed up a lot of dates. Gibbs appointments, conference calls, things like that. I don't think I would ever mix up the date of a sibling's funeral.
I think it'd be tough to do.
Also, he mixed it up by over a week?
Yeah, it's a big mistake.
Don said he could add nothing to what he's already said and told reporters per the Klamath Falls Herald and News, the only thing I'd like to say is thank you to the people who have helped in the search for all their work and all their help and prayers. Don was there to settle his parents' estate and meet with Detective Walter Graven. And again, I don't want to put too much on Don. I will say that some of these things are strange, right? You don't go out and help look for your family in this time of crisis. You don't attend 2 of your sister's funerals, explaining that you got the dates mixed up. Those type of things are not going to sit well with a lot of people.
No, just doesn't look good.
It doesn't look good. Does it mean it couldn't happen? No, technically it doesn't. According to Graven's reports, Don said he suspected foul play, but added, I know of no one who would murder my folks or no reason for it, but I don't see how it could have been an accident. In February 1961, the police took a new look at a report that screams were heard at Cascade Locks the evening the Martin family disappeared. The Oregon Journal received a letter from a resident of Camas, Washington, who was parked with a friend at Cascade Locks that evening. They saw a car proceed under railroad tracks leading to the old river locks. Moments later, they heard screams. They went to investigate but found nothing. They filed a report when they learned about the family's disappearance.
Okay, that sounds somewhat suspicious, right?
It does. My thought is you're probably going to hear screams, or there would be screams coming from that car at some point either way.
Yeah.
Accident or foul play. At some point, you're going to realize that you're heading over the cliff, even if it was an accident and people are going to be screaming. Now, obviously, if it's foul play and you're being pushed, you know what's about to happen, probably even sooner. But I don't know that that really definitively points in one direction or the other.
I'm also thinking the car must have either really been out of sight, out of view down the water's edge, or it sunk really fast by the time they got there.
I would think it wouldn't take that long to sink.
Yeah.
Don Martin was required to wait 7 years before his family could be presumed dead. He was able to settle their estate in 1966 and received a $14,000 life insurance payment per the Corvallis Gazette-Times. By this point, Don was 36 years old and married with 2 children.
So he probably received whatever was in their savings and things like that, and eventually got this life insurance payout of $14,000.
But I never really saw anything other than the $14,000. $14,000 is a good chunk of change, but we said earlier, right, that these people had squirreled away quite a bit of money. Now, how much that was, I don't know.
Right.
According to a 2008 documentary by KOIN, Susan and Virginia were cremated, and their remains were unclaimed for 10 years. KOIN could not find additional information about what happened to the remains. And again, I think if you're going back to Don, this is going to rub a lot of people the wrong way. He did say he had a strained relationship with his family. He missed the funeral, doesn't have his sisters buried, has them cremated. I don't know if he made that decision. I don't know who else would have been left to make the decision, but then doesn't claim their remains.
Just lets them sit there for the next 10 years.
It doesn't mean that he had anything to do with their deaths.
No.
But it doesn't paint him as this good guy. And I think a lot of people listening will find it very suspicious.
And maybe he just didn't have anything to do with the family, but still, at the end of the day, you're the last piece of that family. And I think you would have that responsibility.
Well, and did he have a strained relationship with every member of the family or just his parents?
Yeah, because these were just young girls.
These are his two young sisters.
Yeah.
Seems cold, right? At the very least. The bodies of Ken, Barbara, and their daughter, Barbie, have never been found.
In our research, we didn't see much about them looking further into the site where the clothes, what they thought were clothes that popped up, when the barge dropped anchor. And you would thought that would have been a prime site to maybe drop some divers in and take another look.
Yeah, I mean, we don't know whether they did or not. We just didn't see it in the research. We also don't know how deep this body of water was.
And how dangerous.
Don later moved to Oahu, Hawaii, and passed away there in 2004. When KOIN covered the case in 2008, his son said he spoke very little about his family, and they didn't know any details about their grandparents and aunts. So, I mean, maybe strained relationship is too light of a term, because it seems like he did not like them at all.
No, it really sounds like that.
And just really wanted nothing to do with them. Don's son was willing to speak to reporters because he wanted to learn more about his family, but he changed his mind after he set up a meeting. Don's daughter later said, "It's a chapter in our lives better left closed."
And I get that. Maybe let's not open up something that happened in Dad's past. We don't need it, so let's not even go down that route.
Well, there could be two reasons. We don't want to know the sad details of what happened, but also we don't want to find out that our dad possibly was somehow involved in this.
Yeah, that definitely would not be something you would want to learn.
Graven's superiors told him to leave the case alone, but he wrote in his notes, "Even though I can get no cooperation from anyone, there is no murder that can't be solved." Detective Walter Graven retired in 1966, but he wasn't ready to give up his search for answers. He wrote that the case will be solved if I live long enough for the car and bodies to be found. Sadly, Graven died in 1988. And it does kind of shock me, Gibbs, that they have not been able to find this car.
You got people that dive for treasures.
They found the Titanic.
Yeah. You tell me they can't find this car?
But at the same time, how many cases have we done where they haven't been able to locate a car, let's say in a river?
Right.
Not even as big as the Columbia. Yet they have found 6, 7, 8 other cars.
That's true. Yeah.
that they weren't looking for, which is a little scary. But the car is later found in an area where they were searching.
It's bizarre.
It's not a sure thing that you're just going to be able to find exactly what you're looking for.
Sounds like a song.
Maybe. And you don't always get what you want.
Okay, you two.
Or the Rolling Stones.
Depending on which song you're thinking of.
Graven's children have read his case notes extensively, which I think I would do as well. If my dad was this big detective and, was really big into this one kind of high profile case.
Right.
I think I would be poring over his notes after he died.
I mean, it's a pretty famous case in America, let alone how famous it would be up in Oregon.
I'm never going to get you to stop saying Oregon. That's just something I've learned over 8 years of doing this podcast.
It just rolls with Illinois.
It does. Graven's daughter, Gloria, told KOIN, Dad assumed that probably Kenneth Martin was shot in the head and the girls and mom, then probably knocked out, and the car shoved over into the river. It's really deep where this particular spot is. And maybe that goes back to why they haven't been able to find the car. His grandson, Greg Graven, said, "My grandfather was obsessed with this case." And I think that's putting it mildly.
Yes.
The guy worked on it his entire career, and then even after he retired, he kept working on it.
And he vowed to solve it, if he could ever find the car.
And there are some detectives like that. They have one case that they just cannot let go of, even when they're not getting paid anymore. They're not on the force. They still can't stop.
I think sometimes they feel like they owe it to the family members that are alive, but they also feel like they owe it to the deceased to figure out what happened to them.
Yeah, I get that. I just think that's different than most professions. When you retire, I know for a fact you're not going to be fretting over TPS reports.
I will not be.
Or thinking about any of that stuff.
It's funny that you think I do that now.
According to Greg, his grandfather believed that it was a homicide and it would be solved when the vehicle is located. In the final pages of his notebook on the case, Graven wrote, "Had to be planned by," and then a name is blacked out, "no one else with motive." Graven had intentionally blacked out the name with dark ink. J.B. Fisher, author of Echo of Distant Water, used computer photo enhancement and determined that Graven wrote the name Donald.
Interesting.
It is interesting. First of all, when you say no one else with motive, I think your first thought goes to Donald because of the financial motive involved, but no one really knows why he blacked the name out. Greg Graven followed in his grandfather's footsteps and became a police chief. Graven's notes were given to Jay Waterbury, retired chief of the Dalles Police Department. In 2019, Waterbury told KOIN that he hopes the car will be found, but even if there is evidence of a homicide, he doesn't know if anyone could be prosecuted. And I would say it would be tough sledding, right? At this point, so many years later, to prosecute someone, chances are a lot of people involved would be dead.
Sure.
Obviously, if it was Donald, if it turned out to be Donald, he's no longer alive. And we've been talking about, trying to find this car. The one thing that we did see is that over the decades, police and volunteers have completed multiple dives in the Columbia River, but the car has never been found. Now, there just wasn't anything specific to that area, right? About where this barge was, the anchor, the metal object. But I'm sure they must have dove there as well.
And maybe when the barge hit it with the anchor, did it dislodge the car itself too? And the car shifted
and started to move.
Yeah.
I just don't know. I think as we wrap this case up, there are a number of mysteries. I think first and foremost, was this an accident that claimed the lives of the Martin family, or was it foul play? If it was foul play, then you do have to start to look at the area of motive. Now, according to Graven, there's really only one person with a motive, and that would have been Donald. He had the strained relationship with his family. We know he had some issues with money because he stole a bunch of items that his dad then had to bail him out on, pay for.
You had this criminal in the area.
Or two.
And we don't know the name of the other individual, but maybe could it have been Donald.
But what motive would he have? That's the thing. I think that's why most people think that Donald is Donald Martin.
Right.
But it's been 65 years since the Martin family disappeared. And I think, because two of their young daughters were found in the river, it's assumed that the entire family met a tragic end. But exactly how they died, whether it was an accident or a homicide, we may never know. There are some of these very mysterious cases that you would love to say, well, we'll find out. I don't know about this one because I don't think there's any DNA sitting anywhere that's going to point to a perpetrator.
Right.
There could have been if they still had that gun, possibly. We're 65 years on. In those 65 years, the car has not been found. The remaining family members have not been found or surfaced.
It almost have to be like some type of luck for someone to find the vehicle. But even if they find the vehicle, what's that going to tell them?
Is it going to tell them anything? Yeah, you just don't know. I mean, it's been sitting in the water for 65 years. What's going to be there of any evidentiary value? And I would say probably not much at all. And I think it's very doubtful that there's anyone with knowledge of what happened. If this was some type of foul play, who would come forward now? Because frankly, they're probably not alive anymore.
Right.
Anybody with direct or indirect knowledge of what happened, because we're 65 years on, is probably passed by now.
And it sounds like Donald didn't say anything to his son, probably not his daughter. So this is why it remains a mystery.
And it may forever. You know, there are sadly some cases that will never be solved. But that's it for our episode on the Martin family disappearance. We got some voicemails, Gibbs. You want to check those out?
Let's hear them.
Hey, guys. I was listening to the True Crime All the Time Unsolved episode of Colt Haynes and Molly Miller, where you two were trying to figure out the guy's name that Walking Tall was based on, and that was Sheriff Buford Pusser. And it had me thinking as well, that would be a good episode to talk about involving him on TCAT, because his wife, Pauline, was murdered. So if you guys wanted to talk a story about him and the murder of his wife, and then how he goes on the whole cleaning up the town of all the bad guys and all the drug dealers and all the bad guys in his neighborhood, I would really enjoy that if you were able to find a way to work that one in for an episode. Other than that, guys, great show. I enjoyed it a whole lot. Keep your head on swivel and keep your own time ticking.
All right. Appreciate that. How could anybody forget the name Buford Pusser?
I don't know, but we forgot. But Buford is right on, man.
No,
Buford,
you said Brubaker.
I know, but Buford's right on. Now I hear that. Yeah. Buford.
Well, yeah, now that he's told you, you said...
Hey, I make a mistake every now and then.
No, I'm not saying you make a mistake. What I find funny is you say, oh, yes, that's definitely it. Yeah, he just told us what it was.
And that stick of his.
Hi, this is Monica from Saskatchewan, Canada. I'm 52 years old, so many of your references and jokes truly resonate with me. You've spoken about running out of gas on a number of occasions. I did it twice about 8 years ago, once in McDonald's drive-thru in the winter, and then again in McDonald's drive-thru the following summer, so never again. I'd love to hear you do Ariel Castro. I'm Team T-Cat, but if a K-bar was held to my throat, I'd go Team Mike because your voice is kind of sexy. Anyway, this is my absolute favorite podcast. I tell everyone about you guys, and I feel like you're truly my pal. Stay safe and keep your own time ticking.
I'm guessing her favorite restaurant is McDonald's.
I doubt it. I don't know how many people polled would say their favorite restaurant is McDonald's. Although it is strange to run out of gas twice, both times at McDonald's. I'm going to throw that out there.
Now, did she say if you held a K-bar to her throat?
Yeah.
She would be okay with that because your voice is sexy?
No, she said she would have to say that her favorite was me.
Oh, okay.
If a K-bar was held to her throat, which
I gotcha.
We hope that never happens.
Never, ever.
And especially Gibby's K-bar, because his is so sharp.
It's very sharp.
I mean, he sits here during the episode, like honing it.
I do.
On this whetstone type thing.
I shaved my face with later.
Yeah, but you don't need to sharpen it during the episode. Number one, it's disconcerting because I'm sitting less than 3 feet away from you.
Because I keep looking at you when I do it?
Yes. Oh, my goodness. But appreciate the voicemail very much.
We do.
That's it for another episode of True Crime All the Time Unsolved. So for Mike
and Gibby,
stay safe and keep your own time ticking.
Got summer movie plans? Pluto TV's Summer of Cinema has hundreds of free movies to stream all summer long, no matter where you are or what you have planned. Turbocharge your summer viewing with Sonic the Hedgehog, or rock out while watching Rocket Man. Stay classy with Anchorman, The Legend of Ron Burgundy, or go behind enemy lines streaming Saving Private Ryan. For all your summer plans or for no plans at all, download the Pluto TV app to stream free movies anytime. Summer of Cinema on Pluto TV. Stream now, pay never.
Find yourself looking for a new job or change in career? Monster.com is here to help. We are not only here to bring you job postings, but also AI interview prep and salary tools, expert career advice, and top-notch resume services. We've got everything you need to land your perfect job fit. Discover the magic of finding the ideal job with Monster.com. Your future starts now. Visit Monster.com today. Your next job opportunity is just a click away.